Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kahlut Podcast. I'm your host, the Side Guy. We sit down for an in-depth conversation that navigate through the trials and tribulations of life's most challenging moments. Our podcast is a tapestry of human resilience, a place where laughter and stories light up even the darkest of times. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here with us today. Welcome everyone, Aminah. Welcome, Aminah.
Hi, Sai. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. So tell us about your trials and tribulations, Aminah.
We're jumping right into trials and tribulations.
I mean, tell me about the happy thoughts, happy things then, if we're not going right into trials.
Maybe I can offer some context about who I am, and will that
No,
help?
we already know who you are.
Yeah.
I'm just
Okay.
kidding. Yes, tell us about yourself. Who are you, Aminah?
That's
What do you do for a
That's a
living?
great question. I think I am more than what I do in terms of my job and what pays my mortgage. But I am, I'm a mother of two beautiful girls. I am a Palestinian-American Muslim who has had the lovely privilege of living in Palestine or in the West Bank for her adolescent years, and came back to the U.S. for college. Okay. And have been here ever since.
Well, that sounds like a whole lifetime right there. Shout out to you, Palestinian-American, coming to the States, achieving that better life, the American dream as they say it, and making it big. So shout out to you. Tell us about the different roller coasters, because, you know, I want to say in the 70s, 80s, our great-grandfathers did the same trip, but it was way different than it is today or in the last generation. So walk us through that.
Well, I want to first say that I recognize that my parents' ceiling is my floor. And what I mean by that is that they really paved the way for my siblings and I to be successful, and that I and my siblings and I did not have to go through all the things they went through. My siblings and I were all born in the U.S., and then when I was 11, we moved overseas, and that was back in 1993. And that was really hard because, you know, I didn't want to be there.
You didn't want to be where?
I didn't want to be in Palestine. I didn't want to be in the West Bank.
So this was 1993.
1993.
How old were you?
I was 11.
11 years old in the West Bank. Didn't want to be there. Why didn't you want to be there? This is the Holy Land. It's the motherland.
Because I didn't have that context. Like, I knew it was special, but I didn't really appreciate it for what it was and what it could offer me. I cared about my friends, and I was leaving my friends an ocean away. I was just getting ready to start middle school, and I was going to have a locker, like all those cool things, right?
You saw forward, but you didn't see the big picture.
Yeah, I didn't see the big picture. And so I was out there for 7 years at a middle school and high school there, and I met some incredible human beings. I learned a lot about my grandparents, our land out there, our olive groves, picking olives, meeting my cousins, learning the language, learning how to speak Arabic and, you know, read it, write it, learning our scripture. So we were in a unique situation because we went to I don't want to call it a private school. I would call it more like a charter school where it was a school for students just like myself who were born in the U.S., who spoke Arabic, but maybe not well enough to participate in the neighborhood schools. And so everyone at that school looked like me, had the same experience as me. Parents literally picked them up and moved them overseas. Yeah. Some were living with their grandparents. Some were just living with their mom. I was fortunate enough to have both of my parents there.
Your parents found value in bringing you quickly to the motherland and have you feel the dirt in between your toes and learn the language and learn the culture, how they grew up, how the villages were set up, and engulfing the kids in that. So that was an important value to your parents. So shout out to them, because that's a dream that a lot of people had post becoming American, and the one thing that they miss or wish they could have done better is exactly what your parents did. They brought you guys back.
Yeah, and I recognize that now. At the time, I don't think I did, but looking back, I am who I am. I care about the things I care about because of our experience there. And some of my best memories are things that we can't necessarily experience here, like climbing up the olive trees and throwing olives at my brother, picking olives and kind of making our own olive oil, and just those little things that really represent Palestinian culture that you don't necessarily, I went to the one here, the olive mill here in Queen Creek, but it doesn't feel the same. Yeah. It just feels different. So there's also like a sadness and to it all with everything going on right now. But I know I'm not helpless. I know there's more that we can all do collectively, but there's just so much beauty and so much joy in Palestinian culture. And I hope we can capture some of that today. Absolutely. In terms of like our resilience. Yes, trials and tribulations, but Palestinians are more than just the images we see on the news. We have so much joy in our life, our music, our food, our gatherings, our tea, just all of it. Yeah. And I didn't see it as an 11 or 12-year-old, maybe even I left 3 days shy of my 18th birthday. We graduated high school, and then I came back to the U.S., and then it was just the grind. It was school. Mm-hmm. It was work. It was full-time school, full-time work, trying to navigate, trying to prove myself, trying to find my worth in my accomplishments. And I've got plenty of accomplishments, and I'm not going to sit here and list all those. And I realized that my worth doesn't come from how much I get done. It's not based on my output. My worth comes from how I can use my strengths to contribute to society, to help not just Palestinians, but help all people. So I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm just trying to figure out what my role and what my purpose is.
Very good. So walk us through some difficulties in trying to find your purpose.
I think the first thing I would say is not really knowing myself, not really knowing what I wanted. Like I would say, I want these things. I want bachelor's degree, and then a master's, and then a second master's, and then education. Like, education is ingrained in us. And my mom always says to us, no one can ever take education from you. And I often found myself thinking, why is my mom always saying that? No one can ever take education from you.
Can't take the knowledge out of your brain.
Can't take the knowledge out of the brain. Can't take the experience out of your brain. I think about Palestinians and how much they've lost, but no one can take education away. Even now, like so many of our educated individuals, doctors, journalists, lawyers, they're all being targeted. And when you take away education, you take a person's ability to grow and progress. And my mom knew that. And my mom knows that. So
I think I read something, most PhDs per capita.
Yes.
In the world, globally.
Yeah, I read that. Yes.
It's crazy.
And probably not anymore.
With everything that's happened, of course, probably not.
Yeah. So I think my purpose is, I'm an educator. I've been in the classroom. This is my 19th year in education, and I taught for 17 years in the classroom. And so now I'm in a different role, still serving a public school here in the Valley. And, in terms of defining my purpose, I would say early on in my career, I had a friend of mine. I was living in West Palm Beach in Florida, and he was in West Palm Beach, and him and his wife came over, and he asked me, he said, why aren't you working at an Islamic school? Why don't you, you're bright, you can serve our community. And I thought to myself, well, don't you think I am serving our community? Like, people are seeing a hijabi, so I wear hijab. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing a different side of me. They're seeing the humanness, right? I always use that word. They see the humanness in a female, in a hijabi. And then, later they saw me as students saw me as a mother, and in terms of becoming a new mom and then having a second child. And so
saw you as a mother and a teacher at the same time.
Yeah. And I wasn't what they saw on TV, right? I wasn't what was portrayed in movies, the propaganda that's used against Palestinians, or even just the images. And so on my very first day of teaching, so I'm going to date myself here, back in, when was that?
19?
No, not that far. Okay, no. It was 2005. Okay.
05, okay.
Yeah. And one of the first things they tell you as an educator is greet your students at the door. It's basic relationship building. And so I'll never forget, I was standing at the door. The kids were kind of getting a little bit loud. And, first day of school, they all saw each other. I taught 8th grade, so they knew each other from 6th and 7th grade. Mm-hmm. So in Florida, it's 6th, 7th, 8th is middle school. And so I remember turning around and kind of peeking my head in, and I said, hey guys, make sure you're in your seat before the bell rings. And one student, her name was Elizabeth, and she called me. She's like, she rolled her eyes And she called me a terrorist. Very first day of teaching.
A student called you this?
A student called me this.
How old?
8th grade, so 12, 13.
And this is the student in your class?
This is a student in my class. Mind you, she doesn't know anything about me. It's the very first day of school.
Saw the hijab?
Saw the hijab.
Terrorist.
Yep. And I feel like that is something that we constantly, as Muslims, I mean, Palestinians, but even as Muslims, hijabis, you're constantly battling.
You're a target. You got a target on your back.
It feels like that often. I could have let that go because she's a kid, but I didn't. I knew that in that moment, I needed to set an example that this was something I was not going to tolerate as an educator. And it was my first year at that school. I was a brand new teacher. And I let my administrator know, and we called the parents in. We had to sit down. We talked. Parents were like, we're not racist. I said, I didn't say you are, but I'm just saying that this isn't something that we're going to tolerate. And what was wonderful was how supportive my administrator was. And I never had an issue after that.
Shout out to a great leadership team. Very hard to find.
And I know that sounds silly, like to call admin, because as an educator now, I would say in my 17 years in the classroom, I've only had to reach out to admin to help me with the student in terms of like behavior and get parents involved one other time, because I'm a firm believer that as educators, or even as just out in society, we handle our issues through communication, even if it's hard to talk about things. And often it is hard. I don't like to rock the boat. So I think for trials and tribulations, I think having to prove myself as an educator, that I know what I'm doing, that I, was ready for this. And it was wonderful. Like by the end of the year, I got Teacher of the Year award, this young lady and she was by the end of the year, she was a phenomenal student. I don't know where she is now. Gosh, she's 17. She's probably has a family of her own at this point, but it's just little things like that. I think that the everyday occurrences that build up over time that you don't necessarily know you're battling it. Like when you go back and think back to all the little things, it weighs on you. It adds up and it weighs on you. And I'm not going to sit here and list all the different things, but I think that, in regards to my friend, when he said, why aren't you working at a private Islamic school?
Yeah.
And I remember just saying, well, don't you think I am helping our community and showing my students? So I'm middle school. So I would have, 6 classes, 30 kids. So 100, 50 or 80 kids, depending on how many students I had that year. And, and those were 100 and let's say 50 kids that got to know me. They knew me as an educator. They knew me as a human. They saw past my hijab. I'll never forget, same school. My hijab slipped back. And at the time I had bangs, never do bangs, but at the time I had bangs. And then the girls were and the kids in class were pointing to me, pointing to my hijab. And I was like, what? What's going on? And it was so sweet of them to respect my traditions or respect my hijab enough. They were really concerned. I was like, it's okay.
Something's off. This is not normal.
Yeah.
We're not used to this consistent. We see instructor Aminah, she has her hijab, but today's different and it's not okay.
Yeah. And
something morally is challenging them internally, probably.
Yeah. They were, confused, but trying to be helpful. And I'm teaching. I have no clue what's going on right now. Yeah. But, kids know what they learn at home and what they see on TV. And I think it's so important that we represent our community, not just in the education setting, but in other settings as well.
A Palestinian-American Muslim educator in America, the difficulties. I'm sure there's others in a similar boat that have pursued a teaching career as a hijabi and have gone through the same, if not worse, conditions post 9/11.
Yeah.
So no, I believe it hands down. I grew up with my sisters going to hijab and having their hijabs thrown off or pulled off, being picked on. It was a normal thing. Mm-hmm. And it became worse and worse and worse with the more ignorance and the propaganda that gets pushed. And that's all the parents see. That's all the kids see. That's all they hear. So What do they go for? They go for what makes them uncomfortable, or what they think they should be bullying, or I don't know. I never understood it. I mean, the human in us. If you see somebody, a Sikh, right, wearing the turban. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it or calling it what it should be, but if you see a Sikh walk by, you're not going to tug at their turban.
Yeah. I mean, there have been instances, especially in Canada, where they have been targeted. I mean, and that's
I'm talking about U.S. specifically, but yeah, I'm sure it exists.
Yeah.
Discrimination is everywhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm thinking, why is there I feel like there's a bigger target on Muslimin, on hijabis, on folks that want to practice openly, when we have the freedom of religion. Yeah. But we don't have the freedom of criticism. Right. And everything else that comes with it. So
I love what you said about practicing openly. I try to make my 5 prayers every day. Especially now with Ramadan, I'm trying really hard to make them all. Yeah. And it's something that I've struggled with off and on, where I'm like, well, I'm at work, I can't stop. And when I was in the classroom, it was really hard to, you have kids coming in, and then you miss the, second prayer of the day, and you make it up. And yesterday was the first time ever, I'm in my 40s, I was at this big teacher event here in the Valley, and it was wonderful. And it was a room when ladies were all getting ready, and I pulled out my hijab, the first hijab that I was wearing when we were initially setting up. And then once I was in my fancy clothes, I was like, I kind of said, hey guys, it was fun, I'm going to go ahead and pray right here in this corner. First time ever. I prayed in front of other people that aren't Muslim.
Public setting.
We were in a conference room, and there was maybe like 6 or 7 other women in there. Oh my gosh, I was sweating so bad. Like, I just was so nervous. And I'm like, why is this so hard for me to like pray? Like, I'm not at a park. I'm not in a, parking garage. I'm not in a parking lot. I'm literally still in a little room with these other women getting ready. But I have this like conviction that I need to stop being afraid. I need to stop making myself small in spaces to ensure that other people are comfortable. I find myself often, people ask me, where are you from? I say Jerusalem. Jerusalem's easy. I don't talk about Israel. I don't talk about Palestine. You just say Jerusalem.
No, there's no conflict in that statement.
There's no conflict in that statement.
Yeah.
You say Palestinian. Oh, well, now people are looking at you.
Wow.
You're Palestinian? So you're from Israel?
No, you mean Israeli, right?
No, not exactly. No. I was at an art show in Tucson a couple of weeks ago, and had someone come up to me, and she was like, "Where are you from?" That's another thing. People just come up and want to ask 1,000 questions, which is fine, and sometimes it isn't. And I said, "Well, I'm Palestinian." "Oh, Israel." And I said, "No, I'm Palestinian, not Israeli." Mm-hmm. There's a difference. I think I would say a trial or tribulation would be thinking that I have to be a spokesperson all the time.
How do you combat it? How do you not be a spokesperson all the time without the due diligence, right? Because it's in our nature to correct something that's not right, right? Mm-hmm. It's human. Forget about religion. Forget about where you're from. You see something that's wrong, you want to correct it because it's OCD, right? It's the human in us. But somebody goes, "Oh, so you're Israeli," and you say, "No, Palestinian," and then walk off. I bet you that's going to bother you for the rest of the day, because the due diligence of explaining the nature and where you grew up, and pre-occupation, post 1948, everything, right? Like the due diligence, it's so exhausting.
Yes,
it is a lot of work, a lot of time. And this is assuming the person isn't being ignorant and somebody that's willing to accept your story. Because a lot of times you go through that roller coaster, and then they're like, "You're Israeli." And then they just walk off. And it's like, what did I just,
and I think
commit to?
People make mistakes all the time, and they think it's fine. But I think that when I tell you I'm Palestinian and they want to correct me and tell me I'm something else, well, you're denying my experience. You're denying my story, my family story. And I'm not okay with that. Last year I did this, I present at conferences throughout the Valley, and sometimes educator conferences. and they did a keynote I did a keynote on the last day, and they were closing out the event with me, and kind of like my educator story. And I was so nervous. I've been working on it all year. And they came into the classroom and they recorded me teaching, kind of did a little interview with me in the library. It was wonderful because I was the first Muslim that was ever represented. Hold on, let me correct myself. First Palestinian and Muslim ever represented, first Arab American represented. And I hold that responsibility. It weighs, there's a lot of weight to that. And I recognize that.
In their eyes, you're a unicorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, needless to say, I'm a phenomenal educator, right? There's that
absolutely.
piece.
You're good at your job. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Sai. So the video, they sent me the video about a week, I would say probably about 5 days before the conference, or my day of the conference. And I watched it. And first of all, I hate watching myself on camera. So I'm grateful this is not a video and this is just me talking to you, because it just feels like we're having coffee. But in the background, there was, like I said, I was from Jerusalem, and they put a map, and on the map, and they had like little graphic design, and it said Israel. And then there was also like a camel. And I thought to myself,
you see any camels in West Bank?
I know you can go ride them somewhere. Like
I can ride them in Chandler as well.
At the zoo. I've never ridden a camel. Not in the West Bank, and nor at the Phoenix Zoo. I know you could do that here.
So it is a thing, but didn't happen.
Yeah,
all right, very good.
Maybe in Jericho, I think. But
so Israeli map and a camel.
So a map, and it said Israel, and I sent the.
Was there a turban in there?
No.
And the clip art. Was it in good faith?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, 100%.
Because a lot of folks, they're trying to relate.
This organization is phenomenal.
Okay.
I would love one of these days. I'm going to go work for them one day. And I would say that, inshallah, one day work for them. I sent the video to my siblings.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And one of my sisters responded, "You can't show that video to Baba." And Baba means daddy. Yeah. And I was like, "You're right. I can't freaking show this video to Baba." Like, it's such a great moment for me and my family, and how hard I've worked, and can't show it to Baba. So here's what's wonderful is this teacher organization is phenomenal, because they really do allow teachers to have, they're teaching us to have a voice. They're teaching us to talk and speak to things that we care about, and how we can impact our students and help public education, or education in general. Let's be public education. And I said something. We were sitting literally, it was 2 days before so the conference was a 3-day conference. And so we got there on a Sunday night. We had dinner, whatever. Sunday night, I ended up saying something at dinner to the person in charge. I said, I want you to know, I said, I'm uncomfortable with the video, because I'm Palestinian, not Israeli. And actually the camel propagates propaganda about Arabs in general. And she was like, "What? I have no idea." Mm-hmm. And it was such an honest mistake. And it's not that they hired another person, to do like the interviewing and do the video media. And all that. Some sort of media specialist. I don't remember, but nice guy. And, at this point, I said what needed to be said, because I'm learning to ask for what I need. That's a really big thing for me now. I can't assume that people can read my mind, because they can't.
Not yet.
And not yet. Maybe with AI one day. Mm-hmm. But, and Sai, they changed that video. They changed it. It was the
public link that went to the...
and they hadn't shared it publicly. They only shared it with me, because they wanted me to see the video ahead of time. And by the time I went up on Wednesday, and they must have contacted this guy, this media specialist, they changed the video. It didn't say Israel anymore. It didn't say Palestine either.
It said Middle East?
It didn't say, it just was the map. And I think it might have said Jerusalem. But the camel was out too. I really think that they acknowledged where I was coming from, and they wanted to do better. Not everybody knows. And I think, and then later I sat down with the director, and she said to me, she's like, "Aminah, I didn't know. We just don't know enough." She's like, "I would love to sit with you one day and really be able to learn about the Palestinian plight and like everything that's happening."
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
A lot of people don't care. That's one thing. Yeah. A lot of people don't even want to try to learn.
Yeah.
And then eventually understand. And that is the biggest piece. Like, you can tell them, hey, this is wrong, this is false, what you've been taught is wrong.
Yeah.
But if there's no comprehension or even the slightest want to learn the truth, then nothing ends up happening.
I'm going to say one more thing about this organization, and I'm not naming it because I don't have permission to do that. Yesterday, I volunteered at this big teacher event, and they knew it was Ramadan and that I'd be fasting because they were taking our like lunch orders. And I was like, no, thank you. I'll be fasting. And so then later I get an email, hey, what about dinner? And I was like, actually, dinner, I'll be able to break my fast around 6:40. And dinner was originally scheduled from 6 to 7. Do you know that they changed dinner and made it 6:30 to 7:30? They literally revamped the schedule to accommodate me. And possibly there were 535 educators in that room last night. I don't know if there were any other Muslims in there, but can I just tell you how freaking phenomenal that is?
That is amazing. That is, I know you don't want to share any organizational names, but like that is, my goodness.
So what I'm seeing is that people want to do better and they want to, I mean, even seeing it at where I work and my kids are at my school. I mean, this year we sent out, I helped draft it, a memo about Ramadan, and we have an alternate space for kids who are fasting. Like people are willing, people want to do better when they know better.
Absolutely.
And I just don't think enough people know very many Muslims. Like for a lot of people, I'm the only Muslim they've ever met.
And you know what? It's a great start. It's a great start. I think the trials that you described in today's episode is not only eye-opening, but it's also grounding. Because as somebody that grew up in America, that was born and raised in the States, in the South even, I'm not the only one that saw and went through those trials. And as an educator, you see it firsthand. And the ability to normalize it and let people see that, hey, you're a part of this community. You don't have to be in an Islamic school. You don't have to be in a private sector to make an impact. You are making an impact. So shout out to you, Aminah, for all that you do and sharing these trials with us today on the Kahloot podcast. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you for having me, Sai. This was fun.